he makes a compelling case for a pro-growth agenda that certainly most conservatives I know thought the substance of which was phenomenal. You could talk about whether he reads the teleprompter, and none of that matters. But the substance of what he said, especially on the corporate tax reform basis, where you'd bring down the corporate tax rate to 15%. So many yesterday I was getting tweets and texts from folks who, you know, some of them not fans of Trump, say that alone would create the beginning of an economic renaissance in American business. We need those types of measures in place. I think that's exactly what the Trump campaign has to be focusing on. The economy, the economy, the economy. That means you're going to have more money in your pocket if Trump gets elected. You want a job, then you're going to have a chance to get a better job if he's elected. If Hillary's elected, we know these policies don't work, but they do put us further and further in debt. So I think that's the pitch he has to make. Whether the media is going to allow him to make that or just belittle him at every turn, I can't say that. But I think that was a good step in the right and substantive direction yesterday.
Yeah, well,
he's got 3 Wall Street money managers, an oil baron, a former chief economist at one of the big banks at the heart of the financial crisis. He's got 6 men named Steve. And you know, that they all care about the same things he does, about, you know, how to avoid paying their fair share.
Now, think about Hillary's response to Trump's substantive plan laid out yesterday. Her response was, well, he has a bunch of people who used to work for Wall Street, and a bunch of them are named Steve. Now, this is a woman who is described by Barack Obama as the most qualified person in recent memory to run for the presidency. If she's the most qualified person to run for the presidency, where are her ideas that are different in any real respect from what Barack Obama tried and didn't work? So she can have her one-off comments about Wall Street, but this is in the wake of the billionaires lining up for her over the last 2 weeks. Those same billionaires who will set to profit enormously from things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership and all of these other measures that are simply going to double and triple down on trade deficits and other economic misery for the Rust Belt of the country. So it's clear from what's going on is they don't want a serious debate. All they want to say is, you know, Trump's this, Trump's that, he's mean, that's all they're going to have. But for regular people watching this show today, this isn't working. What we're doing isn't working. And the temperament of Hillary Clinton yesterday in response indicates that she doesn't have either the ideas or the temperament or the approach that is really going to get this economy kick-started into high gear. So the substance yesterday was on Trump's side. The rhetoric was on Hillary's side, and very rich coming from someone who made a couple $100,000 every time she opened her mouth at Goldman Sachs.
Well, exactly right.
We will open a new chapter in American prosperity, which is so desperately needed. We need a new chapter.
Real simple. We have a doubling of the national debt. We have millions more in poverty and on food stamps. Labor force participation lowest in all of these years. You have the worst recovery since the 40s, if you want to even call it a recovery. Lowest home ownership in 51 years. Hillary's going to do the same. Why would
you left out one thing, Sean? You've created more billionaires. So what typically happens in a left-leaning society is that the rich get very, very struggle. And so when you have left-leaning policies, you have to judge them by what they actually do as opposed to their intentions. That's what Milton Friedman always said. And so the plan that the plan that candidate Trump is putting out is a brilliant plan because it inspires confidence. It's simple. It's easy to understand for the small business person, and it'll give people the opportunity to start consuming again, which will drive the consumption clock and growth in the United States.
Sean, everything you say is 100% accurate. The jobs are in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. One thing I'd like to say about Trump's speech today. The title of his speech was an America First Economic Plan, Winning the Global Competition. That's very key, because what he has proposed in the 4 main principal areas he focused on of taxes, trade, regulatory reform, and energy is all designed to work together to improve our ability to compete in the global economy. Not to run from it, not to be isolationist, but to actually go out there and compete and win in such a way that it benefits every American, not just the richest people in America and not just the multinational corporations. Most of America has been left behind.
For almost 14 years, from 2001 through 2014, there was an experiment, if you will. The 12th largest economy in the world put tax policy into place, regulatory policies into place, public school policies into place, legal policies into place, and it exploded. And I'm talking about the state of Texas. It exploded job creation-wise all across the sector, whether you were African American, whether you were Hispanic, whether you were in the lower economic sector, or whether you were at the top, you saw improvement. And that occurred because of competition. We competed with these other 50 laboratories of innovation out there, the other states, and we won because we put tax policy, regulatory policy, doing exactly what Donald Trump is talking about doing, where America becomes a competitive place again. All of that money that's offshore will flood back in here when you put a tax policy into place that is not confiscatory, as you call it, and you're absolutely correct with that. So, this is a beautiful song for the people that want to create jobs in this country.
He pointed out something that I have often pointed out in New York, about 60 cents. If you add federal taxes, FICA taxes, state taxes. I live in the second highest property tax county in the country in New York. You add it all together, sales taxes and other hidden taxes, it's over 60 cents out of every dollar I make goes to government. Donald Trump pointed out today that the average person pays 31.5% of their wages to income and payroll taxes. You add local and state taxes, that's another 10%. And the business tax rate is near 40% when you add in taxes at the state level, which makes the United States the highest business tax rate among major industrialized countries in the world. No, if I was a multinational corporation, I wouldn't bring money here, would you?
No, sir, and they're not. That's one of the reasons we see the offshoring that's occurring, is because we're holding them up, and they know that they can't have a return on their investment. Wouldn't it be great, I think Americans agree, that wouldn't it be great to have a president of the United States who actually put policies into place, devolve power out of Washington, D.C. back to these states and let these states be competitive, and at the international level send a real message of, listen, if you want to compete, America's fixing to be out there on the playing field with tax policy, regulatory policy. We're going to have public school policies that these states are going to be in charge of, that are going to really create a skilled workforce.
Yeah.
At that particular point in time, America explodes economically.
Governor, I contend the corporations don't pay taxes. Corporations pass those taxes on to we, the consumer.
You're absolutely correct.
So the highest highest corporate tax rates in the world means we, the consumer, are paying that much more for the goods and services that we buy, correct?
Well, we drive these companies offshore. I mean, listen, they have a bottom line, and look at what happened in California. We went and recruited businesses out of California and other states too, but California was where the fishing was the best, and you fish where the fish are. So when you overtax, overregulate, and overlitigate, guess what? They're going to look for places to go, and that's exactly what Donald Trump's done. When you add the military side of this and building this military back up and securing this country, when economics, military, securing the border, securing this country, that's what Americans are looking forward to.
Donald Trump talked about 2,000 new regulations since Obama's been president. I used to see you a lot in New York. You came to New York, and Rick Scott came to New York, and Bobby Jindal came to New York, because you were stealing New York businesses and saying there's a better economic climate down in Texas. How many businesses were you able to persuade to move down there?
Well, there were a lot. I don't know what the exact number is, but during one period of time, Texas created more jobs, and it was like a 4 or 5 year period of time. Texas created more jobs than the rest of the country combined.
By the way, I give you credit. That's very clever. Come to my state, you're helping your state, and you're also helping the companies out because they're all saving money. And if we would do that nationally, we'd all make money.
but you're also helping this country, and that's what this is really all about.
Yes, it is.
You know, Hillary Clinton is about 4 more years of this stagnant economy that Barack Obama has put into place. I mean, he doesn't know how to create jobs. He's never created one in his life. I think it's time to have a president of the United States that understands how to do this.
All right, Governor, good to see you. Thank you. Congratulations on that great success story. And coming up.
Here's the second piece of news. Before we get to the economy, Peter, I will stay with you. Late today, the New York Times reporting a letter signed by 50 top GOP national security officials opposing Donald Trump. We have people like the former Director of National Intelligence, John Negroponte, former NSA Director Michael Hayden, former Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff, and Tom Ridge. This is a hammer at Donald Trump. Would you not say that this is something he is going to need a lot to come back from, because these are heavy-ranking people?
Absolutely. Donald Trump had a very good day until that letter came out. The news cycle was going to give him favorable coverage. For example, I was scheduled to appear on CNN at 7:30 to give a positive appraisal of Donald Trump's speech, period. I was called just 10 minutes before this broadcast began and told that I was canceled because they were going to cover this letter. That tells us a great deal about the biased content at CNN and the trouble that this is creating. He is being kept from competing by the Republican cabal. The reality is, win, lose, or draw, each side has a team, the red team and the blue team. And as long as one of those two teams is in control of politics, the other, even on the out, because of the potential to again be on the in, tends to have a great deal of prestige, can make a great deal of money. Look at the Clintons, and so on and so forth. If Trump were to win, it absolutely breaks that duopoly. So that's what's happening here. That letter is absurd. I think it's important to recognize today that Donald Trump stitched together a very coherent statement on the economy. He drew a sharp contrast with Hillary Clinton, but he also put forward a very coherent, well-reasoned plan. Now, are all the details there? No. Is there work to be done? Yes. His tax plan, for example, scores very badly. It was very amateurishly written, and I expect the new economic team, with assistance from their networks, will now come up with a better plan, one consistent with Republican tradition of compressing rates, eliminating deductions, and one that is more revenue reasonable. So I think he did very well with that. See, the most important task that Donald Trump has not accomplished is to make people be convinced that he has the personality to be president. Today, you didn't see the talk show host. You didn't see the reality star. What you saw was the executive that did make money by focusing on the problems at hand and coming up with solutions. That's how Donald Trump got rich, and that's how he can turn the economy around.
Let's do a couple of things here then, Curtis. I only have a couple of minutes left here. In your take on the tax plan today, is it not fair to say that, as Peter even alluded to, there are holes there? There are still a number of things that have to be filled in. But when Trump talks about NAFTA, TPP, Hillary Clinton, that had one opinion, changed her mind years later, that these are the things that he has got to focus on. Do you think, though, I hate to ask this, but I've got to, Curtis, because you're a pro at this, that he has the discipline to stay on the economic message and get away from all the nonsense?
I think he does. He absolutely knows that the economy is the issue. That's the winning issue. You notice today there were some professional hecklers in the audience. He didn't take the bait. He's now up against the wall, and he knows there's no room for error, and he's going to stick with it. As for the tax plan that Peter alluded to, and you did as well, look, he's laying out some general directions here, some general principles. As he said before, when this hits the floor of Congress, there are going to be changes made. His job is to make sure it's in this general direction, compressing rates, reducing rates, encouraging businesses to invest in America. That's got to be the overarching message, the direction, that whatever plan comes out the other end of the sausage-making machine, it's got to stick to those principles. He did a very good job today of laying out the principles and the direction of his economic policy.
Gentlemen, we are unfortunately all out of time. Peter, I'll give you 15 seconds. Go.
He needs to do more than that, both on taxation, trade, and regulation. He needs to table more coherent plans that score better. With regard to trade, he has to tell us exactly what he's going to do with China to get them to stop manipulating their currency. On regulation, on his website, he essentially talks about an efficacy test, doing it right doing it cleanly, doing it efficiently, so we don't pay too much for regulation, but we accomplish our goals of consumer, environmental, and business protection.
I got to make that the last.
Specific.
Got to make that the last note. We're out of time. Peter Morici, Curtis Ellis, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.